Hello everyone, thank you so much for coming to today's Science Series talk. I also want to welcome the International Water Garden Society for coming here today. So everyone in this room, we're all in a room with greats right now. Today we are going to be talking about water lilies and water platters, legacy, exploration, and conservation at Longwood. And I am so privileged to be able to introduce to you today Peter Zale, Dr. Peter Zale. He holds a master's degree and a PhD in plant breeding and genetics from the Ohio State University. And he is currently the Director of Conservation, Horticulture, and Collections at Longwood Gardens here in Kennett Square. In this position, he leads plant exploration and plant conservation programs through a combination of field, garden, and laboratory-based activities. His main efforts here at Longwood, though, have centered around the development of a comprehensive conservation horticulture program focused on native orchids of the United States and planning and participating in over 30 plant exploration exhibitions through the United States, East Asia, Central Asia, the Caucasus, and Equatorial Africa. In 2024, he was awarded the Philip E. Keenan Award in recognition of the contributions he has made to native orchid conservation in the United States. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Peter Zale. You're all in for a great treat today.
Thanks, Jessica, and welcome everyone. It's a little warm in here. I don't know if you noticed that or not. I think we're all together and trying not to break a sweat here, but I'm going to talk to you today about water lilies. And so I think we're all really here to celebrate the opening of the water lily court, right? Just outside the doors there. And, you know, having been there since 1957, this is really one of the iconic spaces of Longwood Gardens. And so, you know, I think, you know, different parts of Longwood mean something different to everyone. And, you know, on a personal level, the water lily court is really one of my favorite places. And as a plant person, a biophiliac, somebody who really enjoys, you know, just biodiversity as it is, I feel like the water lily court is one of the places at Longwood where you can really get that feeling. You know, all those water lilies, those Victorias all together, sort of, you know, creating this vibrant atmosphere. It's just incredible, but it's also incredibly calming at the same time. And so I'm happy to see it back open. And along with the opening, there's a lot of new plants out there. One of my personal favorites, this one Nymphaea, Rachel Presnell, our aquatics grower, told me that this is one that was developed through a really unique breeding philosophy, but an absolutely incredible plant. I mean, just an enormous, beautiful water lily with these unique flowers, but also really beautiful foliage as well. So, as I was preparing this talk, I started looking in our digital gallery. So at Longwood, we have this catalog of hundreds of thousands of photographs that we can pull from, and a lot of them are historic, such as this one here. So this is the water lily court in 1981, and I'll be honest, when I look at this image, it's not the water platters and the water lilies that attract my attention, it's that turf in there, which, you know, is an interesting aesthetic. It's very beautiful, but what I'm thinking of is the maintenance of that, right? Because you don't want those blades of grass to be going into the pool or anything like that. So I think probably a lot of people agreed that, you know, moving away from turf was a good thing. But there's a lot of history in the water lily collection. And we look at this plant, which is on display in the center pool right now, Nymphaea gigantea. This Australian water lily has this number on it, 1957-0274. So that indicates to us every plant at Longwood gets a number like that, an accession number. And this one means that it came to the gardens the year that the water lily court opened, 1957. So this particular water lily has been growing here for the last, you know, 70 years or so. And I think that's pretty remarkable because this is not a hardy plant. It's not like putting a tree in the ground, and you know, trees need care to get established and they grow, but over time they can be pretty carefree. This water lily has to be harvested every year. It has to be stored, it has to be cared for. There's a very distinct calendar of events that make sure that it persists in our collection. And I want to talk a little bit more about that today in addition to some other things. So that beautiful curated collection of water lilies that you see out there doesn't just happen overnight. You know, this has taken decades of work to develop a collection of water lilies, selecting the best water lilies of their kind to put on display so that that display looks world class when it is open to the public. So there's a plant collection behind that. There's also some hybridization. In the image here, Nymphaea antares, one of our famous night flowering water lilies, bred here by Patrick Nutt in the 1960s. Distribution. One of the things we do is, you know, there's an old adage that if you want to keep a plant, the best thing you can do is to give it away. And we do quite a bit of that here at Longwood. We send seeds and we send plants to cooperators all around the country, but also all around the world. And then at the end of the talk, I'm going to talk a little bit about plant exploration, which is part of what I do here at Longwood, and then conservation as well. So what's a plant collection, right? People collect all kinds of different things. You could have a collection of baseball cards, you could have a collection of pots, you could have a collection of anything. You can have a collection of living plants. And our water lily collection is a collection of living plants. And if you look very broadly at what a plant collection is, a set of plants assembled for a purpose. And all of the things listed there are different purposes that plants can serve. And so a living collection, like our water lily collection that we use for our display. It could be a herbarium collection, a collection of pressed, dried plants that serve as a reference for naming new plants and discovering new plants. It could be seeds, it could be pollen, it could be plants growing in test tubes, it could be plants growing or being stored on liquid nitrogen in cryogenic conditions. So it can mean a lot of different things. But in terms of today, I'm going to talk specifically about our living collection of water lilies. And so if you think about all of the plants here at Longwood, we have about 12 to 13,000 different kinds of plants here at any given time. That makes us probably about the 20th largest plant collection of any public garden in the world. And we can't really think about all these plants or give them all the same level of attention. And so through a policy that we have called our Living Plant Collections policy, we've defined core collections. And we have 12 of these. And they are the plants, they are the collections that really help define what Longwood is, help provide the sense of place that you immediately associate with the gardens. And Nymphaea are one of those. Not only are Nymphaea a core collection here at Longwood, but because of all the work that's gone into developing this collection, we went to the American Public Gardens Association, which is sort of a group of a professional group for people that work at places like Longwood and other public gardens, and they have a program called the Plant Collections Network. And if you have a plant collection you think is one of the best of its kind, one of the best in the country, if not in the world, well, you can apply to be in this program, and they review your information. They send somebody out to basically look at what you've got so you can prove that you're doing what you say you're doing. And if they agree, then they accredit the collection as one of the best of its kind. So our Nymphaea collection was our first Plant Collections Network accredited collection. So that elevated it as one of the best collections of water lilies in the country. So by the numbers, this is what our water lily collection looks like. It's about 68 years old. We have 134 types of plants. 13 of those are species. Most of them are hybrids. 38 of them are hardy. 96 are tropical, so that means they can't live in the pools year-round or they can't stay outside year-round. They have to be reharvested and stored. One of them is an IUCN, which is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature Endangered Species. I'm going to talk more about that later. And much of this is housed in one refrigerator. Now that seems a little odd, right? But one of the really great things about especially the tropical water lilies is that they make tubers like you see in my hand here. It looks, just like a flower bulb, something like that. Kind of looks like a cross between a flower bulb and a pine cone or something like that. But you can harvest those tubers and you can store them in a refrigerator for, 2-3 years or more, and you never have to take them out or really do anything. So it really gives us a way to keep these plants conserved and safe, even if they're not necessarily on display in the lily pools. Now, in this same refrigerator is also where we keep our Victoria seeds. And so we have our water lilies, and then we have water platters, the genus Victoria. Those are the really giant ones out there. And until about 2 years ago, there were only 2 species in the genus, Victoria amazonica and Victoria cruziana. Just about 2 years ago, Victoria boliviana was described by scientists at Kew Gardens. I'll bring that up a little bit later. But what's really unique about Victoria and Longwood is that the first hybrid between the two long-known species was first created here at the gardens in the early 1960s, and it's called the Longwood hybrid. And in order to grow these Victorias every year, you have to do it from seed every single year. There's no tuber, there's no bulb, you have to start all over again. And so a lot of work goes into recreating this hybrid every year. And I just threw these in here. These are the original breeding notes done by Patrick Nutt, a Longwood legend. And somebody I never got to meet, very much would have liked to have been able to meet, but it's cool to be able to go back and see this bit of history in our archive. So since the 1960s, every single year, the Victoria has been renewed, and this is quite a process. So Tim Jennings and Suzanne Boom are aquatic horticulturists. Every year, they're out there in the pools, they get all the tools they need, they determine what stage the flowers are at, they hand pollinate them, they cross them, and then they generate the seeds that you see in the bottom of the image there. And so those seeds are used to grow the plants every year. So essentially, Victorias are annual plants, right? We think of annuals like impatiens or maybe zinnias or something like that. We can quickly grow from seed and they grow from flower. But those Victorias in the pools out there are just like those, except that they get 25 feet across. And so the plants out there right now are only about 7 months old from seed. I mean, it's kind of remarkable how quickly they grow. But one of the things about Victoria, you know how big they get, right? Many people around the world want to grow them, but a lot of places only have room for one or maybe two. And so we get requests every year for the seeds, because if you make a cross, the fruits are huge, you get a lot of seeds, way more than we would ever need. And so what we've done is start a Victoria seed distribution program. We've sent seeds to the IWGS, but we've also sent seeds to about 64 other institutions all around the world so that they have the opportunity to grow these plants as well. And like I said, if you want to keep a plant, the best thing you can do is to give it away. Our hope is that the people we send the seeds to are not only, growing them and displaying them, but they're making the hybrids, they're making the crosses, they're generating their own seeds as well. So I talked about Victoria boliviana, the new water platter. It's even bigger than the ones that are already out there. And I think I found this article from Bolivia before it was even known as Victoria boliviana. They set a world record in Bolivia for the largest leaf of Victoria ever grown. And you can see it right there. It's over 9 feet in diameter, right? So, the leaves on the Longwood hybrid are maybe 5-6 feet in diameter right now. So imagine a whole other third increase in size, and you've got Victoria boliviana. We're hoping to be able to display this at Longwood, hopefully sometime soon. We'll see. We're going to need a bigger pool. But everything I've talked about is really the realm of Tim Jennings and Suzanne Boom, who I have already mentioned. They're the aquatic horticulturists that really tend this collection. And it's a lot of fun for me because I get to work with them, and we have a lot in common, and we all really love water lilies and things. And so one of the things that I do is manage our plant exploration program. And plant exploration has been happening at Longwood for about as long as the water lily court has been there. And here's an image here of Patrick Nutt, who I already mentioned. Throughout the past 70 years, many different Longwood staff have traveled around the globe to find plants and bring them back to the gardens. Many plants you can just go to a nursery and buy, but many plants the only way to get them is to really go out to where they grow in the wild and bring them back. And Longwood plant exploration efforts have done this, focusing on Victoria, as you can see there. And, as I've been managing this program, I kind of thought, well, what might we be able to do with Nymphaea? And if you're not familiar with plant exploration, here's how we define it here. So, inspired by Longwood Gardens' mission, plant exploration represents our continued dedication to new plant discoveries, global collaborations, and plant conservation. Today it builds upon a legacy of Longwood explorers compelled to traverse far reaches of the world to learn more about its diversity, share its beauty, and contribute to efforts that will preserve it for generations to come. So You know, a lot of plant exploration used to be about going out and getting stuff and bringing it back and putting it on display, but what we've really done over the last 10 years is bring a conservation element to this, right? So it's not just about going out and getting that plant, but really figuring out what it takes to grow it, what it takes to preserve it long term, and working with partners in the countries where we go to try to support plant conservation as well. And if you look at Longwood Gardens Plant Exploration Program, all of those pins are places that Longwood explorers have traveled over the decades. I haven't been to all those places, I've been to a lot of them. But one of our really exciting new initiatives that we've had over the past few years is work in Tanzania, which was a country that no Longwood explorer had been to previously. So, working with partners at the Tanzania Sansevieria Foundation and the National Herbarium of Tanzania, we actually started focusing our work on orchids. You know, orchids are, if you asked me what my favorite plant was, I'd probably tell you some kind of orchid. So I really love orchids, but orchids really are also poster children for plant conservation. There's more species of orchids than any other type of plant worldwide. They're on every continent, and basically everywhere where they grow, they're endangered. And it just so happens that in Tanzania, there are many terrestrial orchids, so we often think of orchids growing on tree limbs as epiphytes and things like that, but many orchids grow in the ground, just like the ones we have native here in Pennsylvania. And in Tanzania, they make these potato-like tubers, and what's happening is that people are coming over from Zambia and digging up the orchids, and they take the tubers and they make a food out of them called chikanda. And it's basically mashed up orchid tubers, some peanuts and some spices. They make it into a loaf. I think it's I've never had it. It's illegal in Tanzania. It's very much like bologna, from what I am told. I don't think the flavors are the same, but in terms of the texture, it's supposed to be like bologna. But what used to be this sort of rural food for special occasions is now used and consumed throughout the country. So we started in Tanzania to work on orchids, and here's what some of them look like. They can be very, very beautiful. We hope to display some of these at Longwood sometime soon. But I also look at our other core collections. We were going there to work on orchids, but what about other things like water lilies? And there are several water lilies known from tropical sub-Saharan Africa. And water lily, the genus Nymphaea, is very much like orchids. They're spread all around the world. We have native water lilies here, they're in Australia, they're in Africa. And through research, I found that there's about 5 species in Tanzania. And one of them is this sort of mythical yellow-flowered water lily called Nymphaea stuhlmannii. And it's one of 3 yellow water lilies that come from Tanzania. All of them are very poorly known and have not really had a stable foothold in cultivation. They've been grown here and there, but they've been lost, I think, also very quickly. So Nymphaea stuhlmannii, this beautiful yellow water lily, basically, as I was reading about it, it has not really been collected in about 100 years, okay? So it's quite rare in the wild from a very small region in the middle of central Tanzania, and it's one of only 2 water lily species in the whole world that's considered endangered. So I thought, well, we're going to be driving basically right through the area where this is supposed to be growing on our way to see orchids. So we thought, well, maybe we can find it. And not long after that, I read this quote from Carlos Magdalena, the self-proclaimed plant messiah. And he said, discovered that Nymphaea stuhlmannii from Tanzania was essentially extinct. Which is amazing because I'm not sure he went to Africa, but that information was out there. So as far as anyone knew, this species no longer existed. And just about that time, on Facebook of all things, it reappeared after almost 100 years. And an Italian botanist working in Tanzania found the plant growing in one small pond north of a town called Singida. And he even said in his Facebook post, most likely and worryingly, this small pond seems to be the only place on Earth where this species still grows. Anytime you make a claim like that, I feel like you're just setting yourself up, sort of like the gauntlet has been thrown down. Can we find this thing again? So in my mind, I thought, well, there's got to be more of it out there. And so I asked this person if he would share the location, and he said yes, but then never did. And so we were just kind of left to see if we could find it on our own. So I started combing the herbaria and finding different specimens of it that had been collected. And basically, all of the known locations are within that red dot that you see in the screen there. So it's only native to a very, very small part of Tanzania. And so we systematically went to all these places and tried to find it, and lo and behold, we found it. Now, the thing about Tanzania, half the year it rains basically every day. You have the rainy season. Half the year it doesn't rain at all. And the places where this nymphaea grows are these seasonal ponds that slowly fill up during the rainy season. And during my first visit there, we were a little early to find it. We didn't quite find it in flower, but we found plants of it. And then later on that year, our partners went back and found it growing in all of these places that we had been to earlier in the season. And so here it was, growing in places, not just this one small pond where it had been found, but in a string of places, basically, going from the town of Manyoni south to Dodoma. And so we found it. And what's interesting about this water lily, we think, well, water lilies need to grow in the water, right? Well, and as I mentioned, half the year in Tanzania it rains, half the year it doesn't. So half the year there's water, half the year there's not. So this is the same site later in the year, and you can tell if you look at this tree up here in the corner, the same tree is in that photo, kind of right in the center there. So basically, where this water lily is growing, during the rainy season, it's underwater, it produces leaves, it's flowering, but then as the rains stop and it dries down, the tubers just sit literally on the soil and bake in the equatorial sun. That's the tuber right in the middle of that image right there. So it has this very unique ecology, right? Half the year it's submerged, half the year it's completely dry. And I think that is probably part of the reason why it has been a little bit difficult to grow it. And so through our work there in 2023 and 2024, we found 3 populations of this supposedly extinct species. So this gave us the opportunity to grow it. And all of these questions come up, right? Because growing a plant is a lot different than finding it. And I think, with plant exploration, it's a lot of fun to be in remote Africa looking for things, but the real work starts when you have to import those things back to your country, you have to grow them. And so all these questions came up. Can we grow it? Does it need to be dry at some point during the year? Are we able to hand pollinate them and generate the seeds? Can we grow them from seeds? Can we keep the seeds dry and put them in our conservation seed bank? So all of these things sort of came up, and through work largely from Suzanne Boom, they figured out how to grow it. And I think it was something as as simple as when we start a lot of our water lilies, we put them in these small pots, and then gradually sort of, up pot them to get them to the size that you see out there in the water lily court. It seemed like with Nymphaea stuhlmannii, when you started it in the small pot, the roots would hit the edge of the pot and would think, oh my gosh, it's getting dry, it's time to go dormant, right? And so the plant would just kind of grow and then stop and then try to retreat into dormancy. And it was something as simple as just starting it in a big pot that really led to the success of being able to cultivate it. And here you see a plant from last year growing. This was a source of seedlings that you can see here. Suzanne was able to make crosses between them to grow the seedlings. And as I'm told, it's a real, if you're growing water lilies from seed, the trick is not only to get them to germinate, but getting them to have that first floating leaf, right? Because the first leaves are underwater. Once they get that first floating leaf, they grow off and they grow much better. And that's basically what happened. Those seedlings grew, and now you can see one of those seed-grown plants on display right here at the gardens. And so that is a milestone in horticulture. I mean, certainly never in the United States has this particular plant ever been on display. But not only, were we able to import the tubers and grow them that way, we're able to figure out its reproductive biology and get it growing that way as well. So I went back to Tanzania in 2025, and we wanted to see if we could find more of it. And so a lot of plant exploration is not only looking at herbarium specimens, but also looking at Google Earth, right? And so Google Earth is really handy. When you have that aerial view, you can find things. That red arrow right there is basically pointing to a small seasonal pond growing right on the edge, or it's right at the edge of this very heavily inhabited area. So we thought, well, let's see if we can just, go to some of these seasonal ponds and see if we can find it, because it would be really good to know more about it. And lo and behold, at that seasonal pond, we found more of it growing just this year, growing in about 12 inches of water, hundreds of plants, if not thousands of them, bursting with seeds. So what was really exciting about this, not only is it another population, but it was about 60 miles away from the other ones that we had found. And so it shows that this species, again, not extinct, but probably also more widespread than people were thinking. I think it is still a very rare species in the wild. The habitats where it grows could rapidly be converted to rice plantations or other things. So even though we've been able to find more, it still, I think, is a very rare species and needs to be monitored. So I had never collected seeds of any water lilies before, but man, oh man, the fruits are absolutely incredible. So that's the fruit on the left-hand side there. And I, through social media, did a poll of what people thought this looked like. And overwhelmingly, people thought it looked like the sandworm from Dune. I haven't seen that movie, but I'll take their word for it. Whatever it is, it's very odd looking, and it's literally loaded with thousands and thousands of little tiny seeds. So we're importing those seeds back to Longwood. Hopefully we can get them growing, but we can put them in our seed bank and conserve them that way as well. My trip just earlier this year also allowed us to go back to some of these other places and basically just see what was going on with the other population, see if they're healthy, see if they're being impacted. And so we feel good about this discovery. You just never know. We know in Tanzania things can change very rapidly, and even 2 years ago, places that we were exploiting for plants are now agricultural fields. So it can change very, very rapidly. So just because it's there now doesn't mean it's going to be there in a few months. And so I'm going to end here. I've got one more slide. It's a video that I took in the field. We're hoping to put it on the Longwood social media, but it's tough to get really good sound quality in the field. But I'm going to play it for you here so you can just get an idea of what we're there doing. And I'll play this, and then after that we can answer any questions you might have. Hey everybody, I'm Peter Zale. I'm the Director of Conservation, Horticulture, and Collections at Longwood Gardens, and I'm here in central Tanzania, waist deep in this pond to study this plant right here, this very rare water lily called stuhlmannii. And we're here with a team of experts to document populations. This is considered an endangered species, and so we want to find all the places where it grows so that we can document this and tell others about it to hopefully promote conservation. But we're also here to collect the seeds, and I'm holding the seeds of the water lily right here. You can see perfectly ripe seeds, and so we're going to take these back to Longwood. We're going to learn how to propagate them in our aquatic propagation area, but we're also going to keep some of these seeds and we're going to bank them. We want to see how long they're going to last in our seed bank conditions. And just to prove it, you can see, look, here I am, waist deep in a puddle of water here in the middle of Tanzania amongst this beautiful water lily. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
All right.
This is our team of experts. Barry Yinga there, Lawrence Mapunda, Kuro Kamenyanga, and myself, Robert Isikawa.
We should get a video of everyone. I'll take a video and we can all introduce. Maybe we could stand over there.
Thank you very much, guys.
I'll stop it there, but I like ending with that because, all of this work that we do for plant exploration, we don't just, get an idea and then go somewhere and, do all of this on our own. It really is based on relationships with partners. I mentioned the Tanzania Sansevieria Foundation, Robert Sakawa and Barry Yinger, the National Herbarium of Tanzania. Really helps us get all the permits we need to be able to go to these areas. But, I think there's over 100 different tribes in Tanzania. And you know, access to some of these communal areas, it's not just having the government permission, but you have to have the permission from local people as well. And so, you know, Robert Sakawa that we travel with, I mean, it's amazing to watch him work. I mean, he could roll in, you know, in our Land Cruiser into town, and, you know, all of a sudden he just starts talking to people. He says, Peter, show him a picture of the plant. I show him a picture, and before you know it, we're following that person on a motorcycle, you know, into the Tanzanian bush looking for these plants. And, you know, people, the local people in Tanzania have exceptional knowledge of plants. And so it really has helped us, you know, to be able to have this you know, this network of people to work with, and that's what really makes it all possible. So that is the end of my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions, and then afterwards, we're gonna, if you want, we're gonna move out into the water lily pools, and I think Tim is gonna hop in the pool, and you can see the stuhlmannii and just learn a little bit more about the water lily court. Thanks for coming.